think he has to stand up and say who he is. I think we need to understand who he is. He has to stand up for what he believes in. And sometimes that demands a bit more brusque and brutal engagement than he's been willing to. So he can't just blame, look how they turn it on him. True. But he's got, as the leader of the party, he's got to step up and say, this is the deal, this is the consequence, this is what we believe in, and this is how we're going to go forward. So I think it's a give and take. I ain't going to create no excuse for the most powerful man in the world.
Well, I think you overdid it with the health care. He did stand up and he said he believed in that. And he kind of lost track of jobs in the community. So maybe he did overdo it, trying to help everybody, because everybody needs health care.
Right. Right.
Minorities need jobs, everybody needs jobs.
Right, but no doubt about that. But I mean, that's in hindsight. I think it's both and, not either or. Because everybody needs to be, even if they ain't got no job, they need health care. That's the whole point. Even if you don't have a job, now we all need jobs, people, job creation, but even the folk without jobs need to be treated in a fair and just fashion. Poor people do not need to use the emergency room as health maintenance. You can't do that and live. By the time you get your stuff diagnosed in the emergency room, you in trouble. You got 14 diseases and money for one of them in terms of medicine. Which one you gonna choose? You got a moral triage in your own mind. Got a healthcare crisis in your own body. So I think that he was right to deal with healthcare, but he could have done it more vigorously and immediately, and not hemming and hawing, and then the people in his own party. That's what I'm saying. Organize it within your own party. Those who are going to stand against you, he's been trying to recruit Republicans who ain't going to never stand with you, with him. Cut the bait, bruh. Understand where your strengths are and where your weaknesses are, and then go forward. I don't think he did a good job of shoring up his own base. Say what you want about Ronald Reagan, he always understood what his bread and butter was, what his base was, and he didn't depart from them. I think Mr. Obama has been very torn on who his base is, because it's black people. Black people are your primary base. People say, well, black people didn't elect him. Without black people, he would not be president of the United States of America. Most white Americans did not vote for Mr. Obama. Most black folk who voted did. So let's not pretend that that's not a serious base. That can't be the only base, because he's president for everybody. We understand that. But this is an American problem, black unemployment. Structural inequality is an American problem. Why is Mr. Obama trying to make that a black problem? That's an American problem. For Latinos, poor white people, poor struggling Native Americans, that's an American problem. So we have to get on the same page in dealing with that kind of inequality. And I think he needs a bit more of the stamina in the White House. Yes, sir. Yeah, okay, I'm going to answer that first.
You know, I agree with what you're doing. Since we just came from the All-Star game, I'll just use some basketball analogy. He was trying to shoot a three-pointer. He should have just fouled sometimes for standing up, take that foul and make one shot for a lot of different issues than just honing in on the health care. Because that was not, it was the strongest point for American for his general campaign message. But for after the election, it wasn't the strongest because the economy had dropped. So he should have just been fouled, set up for something like Michael said, rather than trying to be everything. And for black people, since I was a national surrogate for Hillary and Michael was for Obama. But the one thing that, I believe that he should have done, once he became president, then you are the president for everybody. What if we said that Dr. King couldn't get an address from Lyndon Baines Johnson? He was a president that had to take a particular needs for particular people and make sure that that was set. What about even Lincoln, though we knew that slavery was an issue as far as not so much for slaves, but for the Union, he still had to address the Negro need at that particular time. So I take a salt to President Obama not saying that African Americans have a specific need when the gay and lesbian community set their needs forward. Even immigrants, around the whole immigrant question for Latinos, the majority of the people, of 400,000 folks who showed up to protest, weren't even citizens, but they got their message across. Our Jewish community got their message across, and this was before the inauguration. So Negroes came after the dance, after the party, got married, and never had a consummation of that relationship. And now they be a good husband. I think that we took the flirt and decided not to make sure that the long-term care was there, because that's what presidents do. It's an office, not the man. It is business. Politics is business, and other communities took care of their businesses before we did because we were just so Negro happy. Now, one thing I want to tell you too, I was on the campaign trail everywhere about this whole erasure of race. I actually had white people in the affluent Northwest community in D.C. pass a black woman saying, and I'm hearing the folks saying, ooh, because it was an icy day, I'll put my life in peril to vote for the man because at least they, this invisible black woman, can say we are not racist. That's not the change I wanted to see in America. Michael usually said, you don't have to get rid of race, but you can get rid of your racist ideas. To me, to have the great white hope in the White House and blackface is not the liberation that I want for my people and for America. I want to change in politics more than I just want to change in the individual.
Yes, sir. Gentleman back here.
Yeah, discussing the inequality as far as race goes in employment.
Yeah, you're talking about the inequalities in race of employment, and half of New York City, 50% unemployed, et cetera.
Yeah.
Locally here, I work a civil service job, and I know that they've pushed to try to get more minority groups in, okay? And they don't even show up for the test. What are you supposed to do? Drag them out of their house, put a badge on them or something, and see how well they do? Or, let's say the minority are the top 3 of the list, and then they have to dig down to number 89 and 200 to try to meet a quota. Are they meeting the needs of the people? Whose fault is it, that they're not there?
Yeah, great point. Let me address both of those. I don't have any local knowledge. I'm sure there are people here with local knowledge who might want to argue with that. If so, you need to stand up. If so, you need to stand up and show yourself accountable. But here's my point. But let's just take it on the national. Who's they? You talking about black people? You talking about they? You talking about they don't show up? You talking about black people?
All minorities.
All minorities. But no white people don't show up, just all minorities. Okay, I'm just asking. Hold on, so I think that, first of all, if you're talking about who does and does not show up for a test, then if we're talking about civil service, if we're talking about unions, if we're talking about government jobs, there's no question that there's been a dearth of opportunity for people of color. I can't speak directly to Niagara because I haven't been here, but I'll speak about what I do know. And what I do know is that if the publication of those jobs is made widely available, number one. Number two, if the people who are eligible to be promoted from within the ranks, that is to take the tests, to be able to be promoted, if the pipeline wasn't already problematized, that is, made difficult by the fact that historically, this is what the Professor Finley said, don't ignore history, take the pipe fitters union. That's been a preserve of white men for so long that the very skills that it takes and that it demands to be able to perform those jobs has been relegated among mostly white men. As an example of one union I do know about. Not here in Niagara, I have no idea. So if the skill set for the acquisition of a certain kind of job has been limited to white men, naturally enough, the people who will respond to the call for that particular skill are going to be white men. So the question is, what job training programs are available to suit people with those particular skills are available? That's number one. Then I'm going to let other people jump in. Number three, that's number two. Number three, I think what's important here is that when they have advertisements for jobs wherever I've gone, hundreds of thousands of people show up for like 1,000 jobs. People are desirous and hungry for jobs. So even though that may be true, I can't debate you because I have no knowledge of this. Local people will have to stand up and say that that's not true. I have no knowledge of that, but everywhere else I've gone, except for Niagara, people have had a disproportionate desire to have employment and yet have no means to acquire that employment and are hungry for it. Now for your point about reaching down from number 3 to number 89, what's interesting is that affirmative action is not about suiting unqualified people for jobs. Affirmative action is people with relatively equal, not from 3 to friggin' number 70 or number 90, but relatively equal skills and scores get a nod because they've been historically prevented from opportunity. right? So that when we talk about the history of race in this country, we got to talk about the history of labor unions, and we got to talk about, and I'm gonna let you jump back in, we got to talk about who's been able to get what kind of job and how. And when in 9/11, when the firemen died, why were they mostly white? Because they had the job.